Oregon waltzed into Happy Valley and turned it into Sad Valley, defeating the Penn State Nittany Lions 30-24 in 2 overtimes. I've got a lot to say about both Oregon and Penn State in this video, but on this show, it's a tradition, we always start with winners. So we're going to talk about Oregon first. This, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all, this was a badass win for the Ducks. And this was a Dan Lanning style win. I'm going to talk about Dan Lanning a lot in this video because I'm not going to lie, he's one of the few coaches in college football that I'd absolutely run through a wall for. And evidently, Oregon players feel the same way. And they're starting to embody his personality more and more each week. His conviction, his tenacity, and he does not fear his opponent. He believes in his team more. And that's exactly what this win displayed. Oregon goes into Beaver Stadium. It's at night. It's a whiteout. There's north of 110,000 people in attendance. But they didn't give a shit. And that's the embodiments of Dan Lanning's spirit and personality on this team. They believed in themselves more than they feared Penn State. And that's why the Ducks emerged victorious. And this game was a slow burn for a while. And I'm not going to lie. If I was a fan, and keep in mind, I believe the minimum price to get into this game was like $700, $800 a ticket. So if I spend that money and I'm getting into the third quarter and it's still 3-3, I'm not going to lie. I'm a little pissed. But watching this game unfold, I always had this underlying feeling that somebody was going to blow the top off this game. Somebody was going to start to pull away and get into rhythm. And I always felt like the team was going to be Oregon because I feel like the offense is just more high-powered, more consistent. And it was. That's exactly what they did. Third quarter, they score a touchdown, go up 10-3, and then go up 17-3 even later in the game. I won't lie. Oregon got a little bit lax, got a little bit comfortable in the fourth quarter, let Penn State get back in the game, and Penn State sends it in overtime. But Oregon grits it out through their belief in themselves and through that grit that Dan Lanning has instilled in this team, and they pulled this thing off. 30-24 game-sealing interception was absolutely electric. The game ended at the same time as the Bama-Georgia game, which was absolutely unreal. What a coincidence, if you ask me. But let's talk about Dante Moore. Oregon won the quarterback battle in this game. I had a feeling Dante Moore was going to be the better quarterback, and he was. 29 for 39, 248 yards, 3 touchdown passes. Let's talk about De'Ara Hill Jr. as well. 8.2 yards per carry. So Oregon had a lot of success on the ground, 176 rushing yards total, and DeCorian Moore is becoming what we expected DeCorian Moore to be this whole time. You know, freshman phenom, kind of like Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith were last year. 7 receptions for 89 yards. He really differentiated himself, and Gary Bryant Jr. had a fantastic night as well. But for as much was stacked against Oregon, the fact that they emerged victorious in this spot is a testament to this program and how far it's come. And I think it's also worth mentioning that Oregon has yet to lose a regular season Big Ten game. They're 2-0 against the Nittany Lions overall since they've joined the Big Ten. They're 1-0 against Ohio State in the regular season. We know what happened in the Rose Bowl. But I think it's time to have a conversation that a lot of people aren't ready to have. And that this could very well be a national championship team this year. I believe in what Dan Lanning has done with building this team culture-wise and roster-wise. Oregon is turning into an absolute machine. And they're winning games that they weren't able to in past years. I mean, you saw how they struggled against Washington in 2023. Like, those real difference-maker games Oregon always struggled in. They're now going into hostile environments and pulling off victories. I couldn't picture Oregon doing this 5 years ago, but that's how this team is built. That's how this team is wired. They give me a real Texas vibe when it comes to their trajectory. Like, they've been building this thing brick by brick, and it's only a matter of time before it is their time. And that time could be this year for the Oregon Ducks. I mean, they look clean. They execute well. There's a certain pedigree of toughness that exists on this team, and it's all through Dan Lanning. They looked like the more prepared team against Penn State, who was at home for this game, and so caps off to the Oregon Ducks on a fantastic victory. They're idle next weekends, and then they get the Indiana Hoosiers at home. That should be an absolutely riveting watch. And I'm pulling up Oregon's schedule right here. They got Indiana. Then they go up to New Jersey to play Rutgers. Man, well, a lot of history between the Ducks and the Scarlet Knights. Then they host Wisconsin. They struggled in that game last year, but I think they'll beat the brakes off of Wisconsin and Alton this year. They go to Iowa, and historically this has been a tough place to play. You know, Indiana went in there this weekend. It was tight for a while, but Indiana handled their business. I think Oregon is the same in November. Then they get Minnesota at home. I think they win that. They get USC at home. I think they win that as well. And then I know I originally picked Oregon to lose to Washington in the last week of the season. I think they pull that off. This is a team that can very well win the Big Ten, be a 1 or a 2 seed in the playoff, and maybe even win the whole damn thing. I'm telling you, this is an absolute buzzsaw in Oregon. All right, speaking of uncomfortable conversations, it's time to have a very uncomfortable conversation about Penn State. It's time to get real. Penn State. And I mentioned this in the preview video. You had every advantage you could possibly imagine on your side in this game. It's at home. It's the whiteout. You've got over 111,000 people in attendance. You've got College game day wearing white suits. The refs were on Penn State's side in this game. You saw what happened with that targeting call. Absolutely ridiculous. Absolute bullshit. That's another topic for another day. Hell, even the NBC broadcast was pro-Penn State. And they still lost. Every advantage you could possibly imagine stacked up on Penn State's side. And they still lose this game. James Franklin is now 4-21 against AP top 10 teams. And I'm going to call it as it is. That is absolutely pathetic. And it comes down to lack of preparation and lack of execution. And just like Georgia has an Alabama problem, Penn State has a big game problem. There were fired James Franklin chants taking place at Beaver Stadium. I think that's a little much because at the end of the day, we do have to remember that James Franklin did revive this program after the whole Sandusky scandal. He brought Penn State back, and so he does have a pretty long leash when it comes to that, and it's impressive what he's been able to do. But with some of the teams that Penn State has been able to field in past years, the fact that they've struggled that much in games against AP top 10 teams is really concerning. And this one might be the most concerning yet. There's a few stats that I want to call out here. In Penn State's first 6 drives, and granted, this was a time possession game. It was a very, I guess, quick running game. Like these drives took a long time, took a lot of time off the clock. Very, very chunky drives, if you will, in this game. And Penn State's first 6 drives, this went into the third quarter, they had 5 punts and 1 field goal. Absolutely pathetic. Late in the fourth quarter, Penn State had a total of 189 yards on offense. Once again, absolutely pathetic and inexcusable. And I expressed concerns about Penn State assembling drives in this game and executing, generating points they need to, not leaving points on the board, not leaving points on the field. They struggled with that. They left points out there. Drew Aller, and this is with, what was it, between 40 and 50 scouts in attendance just to watch Drew Aller. He goes 14 for 25 with 137 passing yards, 2 interceptions, and the game-sealing interception. This was, and I said this in the preview, this was going to be the Drew Aller game. There's going to be a point in time where he's going to have to show if he's that guy or not, if he can deliver in crunch time and high-pressure time or not. And he crumbled in the second overtime, gave the game to Oregon. Penn State's rushing attack, which I thought was going to be more of a factor. Oregon, in fact, outrushed Penn State, which is Penn State's specialty. The Katron Allen, only 54 rushing yards, 4.5 yards per carry. Nick Singleton, 11 carries for 21 yards, 1.9 yards per carry. Again, absolutely pathetic. One of the worst games that I've seen during Andy Kolnicki's time in Penn State. This is just point blank here. This has got to improve. This has got to get better. If Penn State wants to be taken seriously as a college football playoff team, as a team that's going to make a deep playoff run, this has got to improve. And I'm going to preface this. I never jumped on the Penn State national championship bandwagon at all in the offseason. I think this is a really well-engineered team. I think it's one of the best rosters in college football. But I've yet to see Penn State really put together. And it's these games here why I have a concern about them. Because you get everything that you possibly could to go your way, every possible advantage, and you still find a way to lose this game. I'm not going to sit here and slander James Franklin. I'm not going to sit here and talk shit about the program. It's a fantastic program, and they can very well write the course, but just point blank, they got to figure it out when it comes to big games. They've got Ohio State in the shoe. It doesn't get easier on November 1st, and they've got to win that game. I don't know if they're going to. I'll probably pick Ohio State, not going to lie, just because of track records. But the pressure is on. I'm not going to say James Franklin's seat is warming up, but it's starting to become an LSU situation where fans, boosters are starting to get impatient because this is, quote-unquote, Penn State's year. And I'm looking at their schedule here. They could finish the season 9-3. I'm not going to lie. They still have Ohio State and Columbus. They still have Indiana, who I think is a better team than Penn State right now. They have to go to East Lansing. I'm not overlooking that with Aiden Childs. And they host Nebraska with Dylan Raiola, who I think is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in college football. It just kind of gets overshadowed by how bad Nebraska's offensive line is. They've got UCLA next weekend. They should win that game. I think they will. And they've got Northwestern. Good little tune-up. And then Iowa on the road. Like I explained, I think they win that game just like Oregon does. Then Ohio State, Indiana, Michigan State, Nebraska, and the end of the season with Rutgers. So, a lot of losable games left on the schedule if you're Penn State. Looking at that Indiana game, looking at Ohio State, looking at Michigan State, Nebraska. They've got to go at least 3-1 in those games. They cannot afford 2-2. If they're 2-2 and they sit there at 9-3, there's a good chance they don't make it into the CFP. And then that would be one of the most disappointing storylines in all of college football this year, as so many analysts, so many people had Penn State at number 1 in their polls. Penn State winning the national championship. That's the expectation. That's the standard this year. And this is not a good start. Again, not going to be an alarmist, not going to freak out. There's still time to correct this all, and hopefully Penn State can figure some things out. But they've got a big game problem, and they got to figure it out. Fantastic, profound win for Oregon. Alarming loss for Penn State. Let me know what y'all think about this game in the comment section below. Thank you all for watching. Have a great day.